Welcome to Making the Cut podcast with Chris Hill and Sean Winter, where we help you succeed in life and business by sharing principles and strategies that guide some of the most successful people in the world.
This is the Making the Cut podcast, episode 3 with Jon Gordon. I'm Chris Hill.
I'm Sean Winter. Welcome, everyone.
So, Sean, I had this incredible conversation with Jon Gordon, thought leader, leadership guy. He had so many incredible, valuable pieces of information and really just perspectives that he brought to the table. He's written a ton of books about leadership, about positivity, really about overcoming obstacles and challenges and setbacks in your life and reframing it in a way that allows you to be your best self, to show up in a way that allows you to do good in the world, not only to like yourself, but to the people around you and maybe something even bigger.
I think he's written, I don't know how many books or whatever, but maybe 10 now or something like that, maybe 11. Positive Dog and Shark and Goldfish Training Camp, No Complaining Rule, Energy Bus. He's got a lot of great information. And his theme, especially in the Energy Bus, of becoming your best self and framing things more positively versus negatively, it really spoke to me because I was definitely a person that grew up with a negative frame of reference. And I was a product of my environment. I had a lot of different things growing up that my sister and I had to endure, my family had to endure. And so it was very tough for me to see the positive in things. And I had to train myself by reading some of the books that individuals such as Jon Gordon have published and other people have published. And it was definitely a struggle. And it wasn't until about 28, 29, I want to say maybe 30, that it really started to turn around for me. And I started to now see the positive in things. And it's incredible when you make that shift, how much more you can do in your life, how much more energy you have, all those different things, right? And you've experienced that too.
No question. And just talking with him, you know, the listeners will hear in a minute, the energy he brings. And it's not just in talking with me. I mean, every day he's like enthused and pumped up and excited. But yeah, taking that mentality and embracing the, you know, I always say there's only two things you can really control in any given moment. And it's how you respond and the way you treat people. And if something goes wrong, things happen all the time, whether it's in business, in your personal life, the list goes on. And we have a choice every day with really how we're going to show up and try to either use that to our advantage or let it keep pushing us further and further back. You know, for me, growing up, when I was 9, my mom got diagnosed with cancer, and it was a 5-year bout, and she ended up passing away when I was 14, which it's one of those weird things to say, not a blessing in disguise per se, but having gone through those hardships and the challenges and seeing her take this exact positive mindset, very similar to what he preaches. You know, her favorite quote was, "Life is 10% of what happens to you and 90% of how you react to it," which is from Charles Swindoll. And I think it's exactly what he's saying is, you know, things happen all the time. But what are you going to do now? You can't change it. I mean, it's not going to make your life any better by harping on it and just kind of bitching and moaning all day.
Yeah, and for me, I had a similar but different experience. It's very twisted. You and I have had talks about some of my upbringing, but my mother, God bless her today, she's still here and we have a relationship now, but she had fake cancer. And what do I mean by that? She created a terminal illness and communicated that she had 6 months to live in hopes of trying to save her third failing marriage. So I remember being, I don't know, I was in high school still. And I mean, she pulled me outside and told me, "Hey, I've got 6 months to live. I got a bucket list. Here's all the things that I'm going to do." I mean, my world was flipped upside down, you know, and all these things that I was doing in my life. And I was just about to go to college and I decided that I'm not really going to do that right now. I want to be with my mom. Turns out 7 years later, she finally admitted to me, it wasn't real, you know? So I had to sit back and I had to look at how I was framing that situation. And I had to change my frame of reference and say, you know what? That was a opportunity. That was a challenge. That was something that allowed me to grow emotionally. And I finally made that switch. A lot of what helped me was Viktor Frankl's quote from me that I read originally in Stephen Covey's book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, which prompted me to read Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning. And his quote was, between stimulus and response, there's a space. And in that space is our power to choose our response. And in our response lies our growth and our freedom. And that spoke to me. And once I realized that, once you let go of that negativity and adopt that positive frame of reference, and you really know that you can control how you respond to people, and it's not that other people make you feel a certain way, that you feel a certain way based upon them, goodness gracious, Chris, it was a game changer.
Yeah, man. And I love that quote from Viktor Frankl. It's super powerful. And whatever it is you do in life, if you start a business like you or I have done, or if you have any sort of job with bills and things like that, things go wrong. And as they always say, where you focus and harness your attention and energy is just going to keep replicating and focusing more on that. So you can either continue to focus on the negative things or find a way to try and reframe it in a way that, okay, this isn't the best situation, but what can I learn from this? How can I be better? How can I bring my best self to the situation? So with that, what do you say we hop into the episode with Jon Gordon? Jon, how's it going?
Doing great. How are you?
I'm doing very well. I appreciate you taking a few minutes to chat with me. I love what you're about. I watched your TEDx talk last night, actually. I didn't realize that you had done one. I saw it was probably a month ago that it was published. You really got off the plane and they asked you to give a talk, and there you were?
Yes, and I actually had to go to the hotel and change into a suit because I was wearing a T-shirt and shorts, and I had just come from San Francisco where I spoke to the 49ers the night before. So it was pretty crazy.
That is, and so you were there for the event already, or no?
I was going in for an event the next morning, which was an educators conference in the same location.
Gotcha.
So that night they were having a TED event. The next day was an educators conference. I was there to speak for the educators conference.
Gotcha. Very cool. Worked out well for I guess everybody, hopefully.
It did. I really think the talk came out pretty good and was something I'd never done before and was very random, so I wasn't even nervous, but I wung it. Is that a word?
Yes,
I winged it. And basically shared what was on my heart in that moment.
Yeah, that's very cool.
Cool.
I gave a talk about a year and a half ago in Tuscaloosa, where I went to school. So, I feel like I can relate a lot to your story with the energy bus in a number of ways. First of all, the fact that you were trying to bring this thing to life. It took a bunch of publishers till finally you're able to get Wiley to pick it up. But also kind of the genesis of it was you being in a place of frustration of maybe not being the husband and father you knew you were capable of or wanted to be. Could you speak a little bit of kind of the evolution of the energy bus and kind of where you were and how everything came to be?
Sure. I was in my 20s. I was married around 26, had our daughter when I was 27 and a half, I was 28, and then had a son when I was 30. So I was a pretty young dad by today's standards. And trying to build a business, make a life for my wife and for my kids, and not being emotionally mature, and also having just a lot of issues of the past. I was pretty stressed out. I was pretty fearful, full of doubt, and just scared. And I wasn't a great father. I wasn't a great husband. I wasn't the man that I wanted to be. I didn't abuse my wife or anything like that, but I definitely was very quick-tempered, very unsupportive, and just not there for my wife, and not very helpful. It was all about me, and I was just trying to make my way, and not really there for my kids or my wife. And so that journey took me to a point where My wife said she had had enough of my negativity. If I didn't change, I was off the bus. I really needed to change. And that was the wake-up call that I needed to look at myself, to look at my heart, and to realize that I needed to become a better leader. I needed to become the man that I always thought I could be, because I looked in the mirror and realized that I wasn't. And so I agreed to change. I actually begged my wife to stay. She agreed to stay. And that started me on this journey of trying to become more positive. I started to research all the ways I could be more positive. I started to check out the research in the emerging field of positive psychology. I started writing these tips that would take these ideas, this research, and then put them into practice. Because I always thought like a coach, like how can we take this research and actually make it applicable? And so I started to do the very things that I was reading about, and the ideas that I was coming up with, I started to do those things. So that began my journey of becoming a more positive person. I started this newsletter, which were 5 subscribers initially. That eventually led to me writing The Energy Bus in 2006. One day I was walking and praying. I knew I wanted to write and speak. I knew I wanted this to be my life's work, but it wasn't going great. And I was literally thinking about giving it all up when the idea for the Energy Bus came to me. And I wrote it in 3.5 weeks. When I look back, it was really a divine experience. It was, the vision for the book. I had a couple of the rules. And as I wrote the book, the rules just unfolded. And then finished this book. I said, I'm not even going to try to publish it. I'm just going to write this book that I believe needs to be written. And then, it was rejected by over 30 publishers. And eventually, John Wiley and Sons agreed to take on the book.
Very cool. I can tell you're preaching to the choir, because I was at a very similar place a couple years ago with my longtime girlfriend, who I'm still with. That she said, "Listen, you need to figure this out. Like you're not contributing. You're not being as healthy as I need you to be in our relationship," and the list goes on. And that's where I looked at myself too. And I had some things from the past that I was holding on to, which I think a lot of us tend to do. My mom passed away when I was 14. Yeah. So I had some issues with letting go of that and getting close, and kind of use that as an excuse to be kind of self-absorbed, I guess. When I read The Energy Bus, there's George, who's down on his luck, who could have easily been me. And he gets on the bus, and there's Joy, and she's a doll, and kind of, I guess, helps set him straight. Can you talk a little bit about some of the principles? I know there's 10 in there. Some of the principles, or maybe your favorite ones that kind of jump out at you?
Well, I think first and foremost is it's a story about a person who has to overcome all the adversity, all the negativity, and all the challenges to ultimately define himself and his team's success. It's about the fact that every one of us will go through adversity and challenges, that we must confront the negativity in this world and the obstacles we face. And it's about going from negative to positive. A journey that so many people go on. I hear so many people like you that say they read the book, they resonated with it. And I think they resonated with it because that was me. I was George. So I was writing a fable based on my own struggle and my own challenges. And so one of the key rules that Joy teaches is the fact that you are the driver of your bus. You decide the kind of ride it's going to be. That it's not about outside circumstances that have power over you and that can impact you. It's about the fact that we create our world inside out, that it comes from who you are on the inside. And that as the driver, you decide it's going to be a great ride, it's going to be a positive ride. Are you going to invite others on your bus? So just the energy you bring to every day, the energy that you bring to others is so important. You just told me about your girlfriend, and again, same thing with me and my wife. See, I thought I had to work hard to be successful. It was about just working hard, about putting my face to the ground and just going for it. And what I realize now is one of the key principles of the Energy Bus is you're the driver, but also it's about driving with purpose and knowing that purpose has to be bigger and beyond you. And when it becomes about others and you become someone who serves others and wants to make a difference in the lives of others, what happens is you not only help others get better, you not only help the world get better, but you get better in the process. So ironically, when we take the focus off ourselves is actually when we improve and grow into the leader that we're meant to be. I wrote a book called The Seed, which is all about going on a journey to find your purpose.
Yep.
And ultimately, it's about serving in small ways, serving to make a difference. And when you do that, you actually grow into the leader that you were meant to be. But it comes through service, and it comes through living that small purpose that leads you to your bigger purpose.
Absolutely. And yeah. For my book, this we're still working on, there's one of the chapters is called it's called Take the First Bullet. If you want your team to go to battle for you, you have to be willing to take the first bullet. And
wow, that's powerful.
And in doing so, which I know you talk about, and I know you and Mike and a number of the books, if you do make those sacrifices and your team and the people around you see that you're willing to put them first, then they will, march into battle with you. They feel like they can trust you, and they feel like, hey, we're all in this together.
Yes, and when you said that, I immediately thought of my mom. My mom passed away when I was in my early 30s, and she died at 59. And my mom would have taken a bullet for me. That's the kind of mom she was. She loved me and my brother so much, and just was, that love is sacrificial. She would have took a bullet. And so there's always this love because you knew she was committed to you, and so you were committed to her. And so you felt that sacrificial love. But then I think about my biological father, who left when I was 1 year old, and he never would do that. Like, he never would sacrifice for me or my brother. And to this day, we don't have a great relationship with him, and we probably never will. Now, I've forgiven him, and that's led to a lot of my growth, but he never was sacrificial in his love. He never showed that he was committed to you. So how could I ever be committed to him? And it's a great example of leadership. And that's the kind of legacy he's leaving. Now, my stepfather, who raised me since I was 5, and I hate that term stepfather because he really was my dad, I carry on his legacy because he raised me as his own. He was committed to me, to my brother, to his other children. You felt his love. You felt his sacrifice. He was a New York City cop. His very nature of his being was to sacrifice for others. And that's what he did for us every day. And I thought about two legacies, like my biological father, who there is no legacy there. And then I thought about my dad who raised me and the legacy that I now carry on. He passed away 5 months ago, and now I carry on his legacy. So it's really about sacrifice. It's about taking that first bullet, like you just said. I love that principle because it's so true.
Yeah, absolutely. And to be able to do that, to make those sacrifices and get in that mindset, I think you have to, like you said before, really have a clear purpose for why you're doing this and what you're living your life for and the situation, I guess, as a whole. Yeah,
it's about being really clear on the legacy you want to leave. It's about knowing the difference you want to make, and ultimately knowing your purpose. Simon Sinek, right, talks a lot about why. I often say we don't get burned out because of what we do. We get burned out because we forget why we do it. And so when you know your why, it keeps you fresh. When you know your why, you have more passion and energy to go do what you're here to do. The research shows people are most energized when they're using their strengths for a bigger purpose beyond themselves. So what is your bigger purpose? And the story I just shared about my dad's, I can write a story about two dads, right? That's a leadership story as well. So when you're going to lead your company, lead your team, lead your nonprofit, lead your school, whatever it is, it's about leading with that bigger purpose, knowing it's about others, knowing it's about sacrifice, knowing that if you want a committed team, you have to show you're committed to them. It's about the energy bus loving your pastors. When they know you love them, well, guess what? They'll be more loyal and they'll follow with more passion for you and the work that you do and the difference you're here to make and the vision that you have. People follow the leader first and the vision second. So what are you bringing that makes people want to follow you? It all has to do with leadership. Yeah, absolutely. And then I feel like, once I was able to kind of connect with people and make that impact and by being generous with who I was and really opening up my challenges and the things that
I had struggled with, and really as a person, but kind of tying into the restaurant industry, a lot of people really started gravitating towards my message. And you get, I'm sure like you, I can only imagine how many you get, but messages and emails every day, like of gratitude, saying like, thank you, you saved my marriage, my life, my career. And once you kind of feel that from somebody, it's hard to not want to get more of it.
Exactly. And, we're all in this together. So the work that you're doing, the work that I do, it's like people just need encouragement. People need to know that you care. People are looking for someone to just give them some wisdom and guidance through challenging times. We don't need something new. What we often need is a reminder of the truth that we already know. So by you helping people through those times, that means everything. I'm doing the same. Other authors are doing the same. And it's basically like having all these different radio stations. Different people are tuning into different stations, different messages. It's up to us to just keep on putting it out there and to be there for people. I always say, you want a following, don't try to get one just so you can have people follow you. Serve people and they'll follow you.
Well, and I made that mistake before because I originally was just kind of putting recipes out there. And it's like, well, you can get a recipe anywhere. But nobody was talking about these challenges that a lot of chefs and restaurant people in general were really facing. And I said, you know what? Let me give it a shot and see if I can connect with anybody. And sure enough, I had an article that went viral, and all of a sudden, the whole game changed for me. John, I know you need to get out of here in just a minute. Could you talk for just a moment about you winning the locker room first and maybe how that could apply to anybody listening with their team?
Yeah, so I wrote a book called You Win in the Locker Room First with Mike Smith, the former coach of the Atlanta Falcons. And we talk about the 7 C's to build a winning team. What went right his first 5 years when he won a lot of games. No one won more games in the NFL except Bill Belichick than him those first 5 years. The last 2, he only won 10 games and was fired. So I laugh and I say that because, we talk about in the book, he's very honest about what happens. And it's like, okay, how could a guy who wrote a book about, success get fired? Well, he takes the lessons of what went wrong and what went right, and we share that in this book. And then I share my own experiences working with all the different teams that I've worked with, NFL, NBA, you name it, college teams. And so we talk about how you win in the locker room first. You win with culture. You win with being contagious. You win with being consistent with your principles and your values, not leading based on circumstances, but leading based on these principles that guide everything you do, regardless of the circumstance. Then how do we become a connected team? We got to communicate. That builds that trust that you need to be a great team. You got to connect. A great team is a connected team. And I've done a lot of work now with a lot of pro sports, helping teams become a connected team. I worked with the Oklahoma City Thunder this year, the Miami Heat, the Buffalo Bills, and also the Los Angeles Dodgers is a lot of fun, San Diego Padres, Pittsburgh Pirates, a wide variety of teams, Clemson football for the past 5 years. So I've worked with all these different teams on how to be more connected. And that holds true in the business world as well. In the office, you win in the office, the relationships, and then you win in the marketplace. So if you have a team that's not connected at the top, you'll crumble at the bottom. So I work with a lot of leadership teams to become a more connected team at the top to then better lead their teams at all levels. And so these are principles that every team needs to be a connected team, because the connection then leads to commitment, and then there's the 7th C, which is caring. So you have these C's that are really a great framework for building a great team. Pat Lencioni talks about 5 dysfunctions of a team. So he looks at the lens through dysfunction, how to solve it. In this book, we look through the lens of what are the key ingredients to build a great team, a framework. And we've had so many coaches, so many leaders and CEOs use this book already for these C's for their team and organization, already becoming more connected, seeing commitment soar, engagement soar, and that's the key with our whole framework.
Yeah, I feel like, and I think I've heard you maybe even say it before, but I feel like this whole framework could even work for a family.
Yeah, I mean, we've had people that actually have reached out and said, this is not just about winning in the locker room, this is winning at home as well. So, winning in the kitchen, winning at the dinner table. So, I agree. If you would apply these principles at home, and a lot of my experience actually comes from leading a team at home. I learned so much about being a dad, my flaws, my mistakes, my successes. I learned a lot about great leadership just from being a parent. Parenting, coaching, and leadership are really all one and the same. The principles apply. You can take these 7 C's, do them at home with your spouse, and you'll start to see a stronger team. Like, for instance, most relationships break down because of poor communication. So that applies at home as well. Like, when you're not communicating with your spouse, your significant other, the relationship starts to dissolve. You have to make sure you improve communication if you want to have a great relationship. And you have to be on guard, and you have to be aware of that. So by improving communication, you improve the relationship. So various things like that in the book would apply to home.
Yeah, and just being cognizant of these things and keeping an eye out for them. Yeah, well, Jon, I appreciate all this great insight into the great work you've been doing and continue to. I hope our paths cross here, one of these conferences, one of these days soon. But keep up the great work. Do you do anything? I know you were with the Falcons when Mike Smith was around. Do you do anything with them anymore, or have you done anything with Alabama even?
No, I don't. Since he left, I stopped working with the team, and the new regime have not called me, but they're obviously doing well, so they don't need my help. And Nick Saban definitely doesn't need my help, so he's doing quite fine on his own. So I go, wherever the coach needs help, maybe read my books or reach out. They want to ingrain some of the principles with their team. That's when I get the call from that coach. So, but I do root for Matt Ryan, and always remember, for 7 years speaking of that team, and he was always in the front row to the left, taking notes, humble leader, great leader, always striving to get better. I learned a lot from just watching him.
That's really cool. It's great to see, in Atlanta last year, off season, there were a lot of people giving him a really hard time because of last year being such an off year for him. It's great to see him come back really stronger than ever and in the talk for MVP candidate. So.
Oh, yeah, he's a fighter. He'll always continue to get better. He's a competitor, wants to be his best. He signed a $100 million contract a few years ago, and yet this guy is all about being the best he can be, one of the most solid people on the planet.
Yeah, and never throws anyone on the bus either.
Never. There are mistakes where you will clearly know it's the receiver who made a mistake, but in the press, they'll really go after him, and he will never throw his receiver under the bus. He will always take the blame.
Yeah, very cool. Another good sign of a good leader, I think.
Oh, great sign. Well, in essence, it's what you said. He'll take the bullet so that his team can survive and come back and fight another day. And as a result, that humility makes the team stronger in the process. So it's a great lesson for all of us on leadership. Yeah, I can't wait to see you speak one day. I'm looking forward to it. I know it will happen, and looking forward to that day when it happens.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Jon. I really appreciate it, and keep doing great work.
All right, you too.
So there was our conversation with Jon. Sean, what did you think, buddy?
The way that he evaluated where he was, and he took it upon himself to begin researching positive psychology and finding ways to implement that in his life, finding ways to coach on that, and in really turning himself around, it speaks volumes to his character, because there's some people that continue to live in that chaotic state, and they almost become a martyr of their own making, and they don't take that personal responsibility and start doing something about it. Instead, they live in that negative world, and just their life is in shambles, and they're in this chaos, and they can't get out, but they're not really taking ownership of it. It's all everyone else's fault. And the way that he was able to do that and pull himself out speaks volumes to him and his character. And I think he models what others should do in their own lives. And that's take that personal responsibility, start digging in, figure out where is the negativity coming from? Where is the chaos coming from? And start axing it and cutting things out. It might be cutting people out. It may be cutting behaviors out like I had to do, learned behaviors from a dysfunctional family and lifestyle. So I love what he was talking about, especially about taking that personal responsibility in him being the driver and turning it around.
Yeah, I mean, nobody's going to make you take responsibility. But at the end of the day, is your life going to be better if you keep and continue to complain about what's happening and keep playing the victim card? No. Everyone will watch you and just maybe feel a little bit sorry for you, but your life will not get any better. So why not take a chance, take a shot, and say, hey, let's try to figure this out. I can tell you for me personally, I was in a very similar place as he was when he wrote The Energy Bus, where his wife was going to leave him. He had a bad relationship with his kids. Things weren't going well at all for him. And this is looking at my life. I was, let's say 5 years ago, I did and still do have a wonderful girlfriend who is very supportive, but then I wasn't giving her the energy and time and appreciation that she deserved. And she was going to do something very, very similar to what his wife was going to do. Get lost, man. And it took me coming to grips with who I was, with how I was showing up and with who I was being, and realizing, wow, like, this isn't who you want to be. This isn't who your mama wants you to be. Like, step your game up. And once you do that, once you kind of embrace that mentality and start looking at things from a positive lens and realize, okay, life's not perfect and it will never be perfect, but I have an opportunity to be a better version of myself right now. And once you embrace that mentality, it's hard to ever look at the world the same way again.
Yeah, and there's two things there that really stand out to me. So number one, my father always said this to me: when the pain outweighs the pleasure, people make a change. And I used to hate it that is the moment when you change behaviors, when you change courses in your life, because why does it have to be that you hit rock bottom before you make a significant change? So I've spent the last several years studying human behavior and thought processes and biases and heuristics and all these different things, because I don't want to be that person that hits rock bottom anymore. I was that person before, to where you hit rock bottom and then you change. I want to be the person that is on top of my behaviors today, and I know when I'm veering off track today, so I don't have to hit rock bottom tomorrow and then make some massive change. And the only way that you can do that, what I found at this point in my life, is that it's important to get feedback from people from time to time, right? Think about it. So in a career, in a job or something like that, they always have performance reviews, right? Which is a lot of times in a lot of corporations, there's this check the box scenario, right? You come in, you look at a piece of paper, whatever. Oh, you got a 3, you got a 4, whatever it is. I don't know. So in your personal life though, how many of you, or even Chris, how many times have you once a year consistently sat down with people and said, I need some honest feedback. Evaluate me as a friend, as a person, as a husband, as a boyfriend, as a, whatever it is, a spouse, a partner. Evaluate me right now. Let me know how I'm doing and give me unfiltered feedback. Not a whole lot of people do that.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of us, by the time we realize these behaviors and negative things that have been going on in our lives, it's almost too late. Relationships, weight, whatever. There's probably my favorite quote that encompasses this whole idea perfectly is from Elizabeth Gilbert. And it's, nobody wants to do it. Not real change, not soul change, not the painful molecular change required to truly become who you need to be. Nobody ever does real transformation for fun. Nobody ever does it on a dare. You do it only when your back is so far against the wall that you have no choice anymore. To me, that's so powerful, and it's exactly what you were saying, and it's the truth. So, yeah, I'm grateful that I've had the opportunity to look at my life and the changes that I needed to make. But unfortunately, it did take hitting rock bottom for me. On the other hand, now I have an incredible perspective, and reading books like Jon Gordon's has been really helpful and influential for me. I wish I would have read them 8 years ago, but can't change that now. Aside from that, I think he does a great job also of explaining how the energy you bring doesn't only affect you, but it also affects the people around you. And if you want people, if you're a leader, if you have a mission that you're trying to drive, and you want people on board on the quote unquote bus, you need to set the tone, and you need to give them a reason to kind of come with you.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, a team becomes a reflection of the leader. So when you have those traits or characteristics or behaviors and you are acting positively, your team is going to adopt that. If you have a team of people and they've been with you for at least some degree of time, right? So no real new employees at that point, but they've been with you maybe 6 months, 9 months, a year. If you wake up at that point and you don't like how your team is acting or operating, it is time to look in the mirror, because the team is a reflection of the leader at the end of the day.
Yeah, I couldn't have said it better myself. And it was cool, me being an Atlanta guy, being able to talk about the Atlanta Falcons. And he wrote this book with Mike Smith called "You Win in the Locker Room First." And I loved how he talked about how that applies to your business, and maybe even in your family, how you're not going to be a successful sales company if you don't first have the team on the same mission, doing the same thing, connected with each other with the same values. And it applied with the Atlanta Falcons. They were incredibly successful those first couple of years, and then Coach Smith kind of got away from that, and as a result, they started to drop off. He ended up getting fired, and he's able to apply those lessons from not applying those same principles in a way that really negatively impacted the whole organization.
And one thing on the positive and negative frame of reference, I know we've talked about this before, is somebody's explanatory style, their self-talk essentially. And the people that have a more pessimistic or negative explanatory style versus the people that have a more positive or optimistic explanatory style, there's significant differences in research. Empirical evidence proves this. There are significant differences in the amount of accomplishments, fulfillment that those individuals have in relation to one another, and even health. They've even done studies that relate health problems, passing away, dying early, all these different things, to somebody with a negative self-talk versus a positive self-talk explanatory style. It's absolutely incredible and mind-boggling. So when you really understand and adopt this principle of framing things positively, looking at things as opportunities or challenges instead of being a martyr and believing that the world is against you and the universe is against you, which is hard in the moment. I mean, don't get me wrong. I've been at rock bottom several times in my life. I've lived off of credit cards. You and I have talked about that, Chris. I mean, to where, I don't know how I'm going to make ends meet. It's been very scary in those times. And when you're in that, I call it that quicksand moment, it's really, really difficult to listen to someone like you and I and say, oh yeah, sure, just frame it positively. Great. I don't know how I'm going to make ends meet, but let me frame it positively. But that's where your character is developed. When you dig deep and frame things as that opportunity, as challenges, and be positive about it, you will find yourself ascend to a higher level faster than if you continue to have that negative explanatory style or that negative self-talk.
Exactly. And for me, the place when I'm at that rock bottom, when I'm challenged now, not 5 years ago, but now, the way I'm able to frame it and come back to earth in a way that I'm able to be productive and helpful with a good energy is by always defaulting to gratitude, by saying, you know what, this situation is hard. I'm not sure how I'm going to get through it, but wow, I still have this, and this. And they say that you can't be grateful and fearful at the same time. And so for me, that's been a lifesaver. And for anyone listening that's in a challenging time, I would encourage you to just look at your life and write down every day when you're going to bed 3 new things that you can look at your life and say, wow, like I have this to be grateful for, and that, and this. And after about a week, 2 weeks, a month, you'll be amazed at how much you really have, even if it doesn't feel like it, even if you can't pay the bills, even if your relationship's going to hell, and the list goes on. There's always something to be grateful for. If nothing else, other than the fact that you woke up, you have an arm and a leg, you're able to talk or listen to this. I mean, the list goes on.
Yeah, and some people say in some of those moments that help them, they say the phrase, it could be a lot worse, right? You've heard that before. You've heard people say that before. You might have said that before yourself. I like to just change that a little bit and add how. How could it be worse? And this is why. When I'm going through some serious obstacles or adversities or challenges, when I'm going through that, instead of just saying it could be a lot worse, I don't really define how it could be a lot worse. So I make myself define it. My wife and I do this a lot of times when we're really going through the thick of things. We will talk to each other and say, listen, how could it be worse right now? Okay, so we've got issues in this category, but how could it be worse? And we put some very clear definitions so that it opens up our perspective and we realize how grateful we are that it is not worse. And when that happens, it's like a load is lifted off your shoulders. You can mentally just make peace with where you are, as opposed to believing you are at that proverbial bottom, because it can always be worse. But I encourage people to put some definitions around it.
I was just going to say, I love that. And I think the key word there also is perspective. It's easy to look at all the negative things when you're right there in the moment and you have the tunnel vision and everything seems horrible. But if you can back away from the situation and look at things from the mountain or looking down on things, it can be a lot easier to realize that things might not be quite as bad as how they seem. That's right.
When you take that macro view versus that micro view and you're not so close to it that you can kind of pull yourself out, it really, really opens you up.
Yep. And so it really comes down to, if you want to make any sort of change in your family, in your organization, and the community, if you want to be a leader of any capacity, I think you need to honestly look in the mirror and say, how am I showing up? Am I being the person that I know that I can be? Am I being the best version of myself? Am I managing and handling problems and challenges in a way that's healthy, not just for me, but for the people around me? And if you can start to address those situations and those questions and have that conversation with yourself in a very real and honest way, but also, like Sean mentioned a few minutes ago, ask for feedback. How am I doing? What could I maybe do better? Things that you probably wouldn't ever notice, just being yourself. So I encourage folks to check out Jon's books. He's got a bunch of great books out there on the Positive Dog, the Energy Bus, the leadership books, and the list goes on.
And one thing I would add to that is do the legwork to get that feedback. Meaning there are ways that you can get feedback and you can kind of analyze that data. You can do that personally or professionally. I think one of the ones that I've used in the past was, I think it's called Factors 360, where I've used that with either myself or I've used that with employees. And individuals, you can send them a link for them to complete a survey on you. And they answer questions such as how you act and operate in the way that you make them feel, all these different things. But at the same time, you complete that same survey. And the way that you become the best version of yourself is when the perception that you have of yourself and the perception that others have of you is so closely aligned. They're almost just touching each other, parallel to one another. When you can achieve that, I believe you're living the best version of yourself, because what you are doing, how you are acting and operating is very much consistent with how people are accepting and embracing you. So I'd encourage you, do some of that legwork. Look at something like Factors 360 or looking at other 360-degree feedback programs or something to where you can get that honest feedback from people.
Yeah, that's very, it's funny you say that because, with the new book on leadership, been doing a bunch of research, and we've come across several studies where it's something like 80% of leaders in organizations would call themselves good leaders. And it's something like 30% of employees think that their leaders and their organizations are good leaders. So there's this huge disconnect. People think they're a lot better than they are. And at the end of the day, we don't really know until we actually get feedback from people. So I think it's a great way. Yeah, Factor 360. I'll have to check that out myself, man. That sounds very cool.
Okay, that concludes episode 3 of Making the Cut podcast. And for show notes, you can head over to chrishillonline.com/podcast. You can get some of the resources that we may have mentioned, especially the 360-degree feedback surveys that you can implement today or tomorrow. Send them out to people. I highly encourage that. They're so valuable. I've done it every single year, 5 years in a row, to close that gap between my perception and other people's perception. So I highly, highly encourage those. We'll even link up to some of Jon Gordon's books. And with that, we will leave you with a quote from Jon Gordon. Take it away, Chris.
Having read several of his books, this is one of my favorites. Being positive won't guarantee you'll succeed, but being negative will guarantee you won't. On that note, we're signing off.